Welcome to Lesson 2 of the Organizational Wellness, Self-Care, and Healing Justice course of the Nonprofit Bootcamp e-learning series. Our trainer today is Cristina Garza. Cristina has almost 30 years of experience working with and in nonprofit organizations as a community activist, youth development professional, nonprofit executive, foster care advocate, and participatory action researcher. For the last 9 years, she has ministered her private consulting firm that specializes in organizational development, capacity building, evaluation, and fund development. More recently, Cristina's work has focused on facilitating individuals and organizations to truly embody social justice and equity, to create collective impact through a commitment to self-care, healing justice, and mind-body-spirit connection. Cristina is an adoptive mother and former foster parent and the unofficial adoptive grandma of 8 kids. Her self-care activities include various Chinese medicine modalities, yoga, meditation, salsa dancing, antiquing, traveling, and shopping for shoes, of which she has some fabulous shoes. Cristina was a participant in the Food Systems Leadership Retreat back in New Orleans last summer, and then she joined us as a co-facilitator of the Kansas City Retreat in October. Cristina, it is a pleasure working with you. Thank you so much for being our trainer, and you can take it away.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am so glad to be here with you all today again, now for Module 2 of this course. And I'm really excited to share with you all today some very specific ideas for engaging in self-care. So as I mentioned last week, we often think of self-care as this private and personal thing we do after work. But in this course, we're going to be guided by this question. And the question is, how is self-care intricately tied to organizational sustainability and social justice impact? The overall course objectives you see here, I shared it last week. It's about making self-care a priority, about opening the space for healing justice, about developing dialogue, and about catalyzing systems change. Again, I know these may be ambitious objectives, but again, as I said, if we just accomplish number 1, to make self-care our personal priority, then we've done a huge commitment, a huge service to the movements that we represent. So, upon completion of this course, you see here what the objectives are for you all as learners. And there are some very specific tangibles that I hope you can walk away with. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I'll mention the 2 that are applicable for today. And the first is about creating a self-care plan, and the second is about engaging in self-compassion and self-awareness practices. So, course modules. Of course, last week was the introduction of this course, and we discussed why this topic is so important. And I outlined a self-care framework that's centered on the notion of healing justice. I shared some ways to begin self-care routines and provided some resources. The slides, the recording, and the updated resource list are available, as Susan mentioned. So today, we get into the nuts and bolts of self-care. And I'm going to provide some detailed examples and resources, exercises, and assessments for you. Today, we're going to focus more on the individual and personal practices, but many of these healing justice practices can be incorporated into organizations by doing small group work or even working with an entire staff. We'll get more into the kind of organizational context with next week in Module 3 about incorporating healing justice practices for liberatory and equitable workplaces. I'm going to share some really cool best practices from the field and how folks are being creative and imaginative to address healing justice in organizations and communities. So first, let's refresh. What do I mean when I'm saying healing justice? Healing justice incorporates self-care, but it's really more than that. And here's what I mean by healing justice. First, it's about engaging in a holistic approach to doing life and social justice work that takes into account the whole self, which includes history, culture, intergenerational experience, and ancient wisdom. It's also about understanding radical self-care as crucial to movement building and social change. It's about making healing central to our work. It's about listening to and supporting those who are imagining transformative justice responses that heal individuals and communities. It's about opening up and being willing to explore new ways of being and doing. It's about developing and honoring practitioners of many different disciplines and modalities with capacities and skills to be with stress and trauma, who know themselves well enough to navigate the complex terrain of emotion and guide others towards change. It's about identifying institutions that interrupt and undermine our individual and collective abilities to heal. It's about valuing care, emotional labor, and resilience, not as add-ons, but as central components of sustainability that restore us to life. It's about acknowledging that care and accountability are at the root of healing justice practice and are some of the most difficult and direct actions we can take. Care and accountability require us to reveal, to be still, to center, and more than anything, to change. It's about holding ourselves accountable for our own healing, as well as lovingly holding others accountable. And lastly, it's about creating collective spaces where we give time, attention, and value to this important work of healing. So before we go on today, I'll start out by asking everyone to just take a moment of reflection and intention. And I invite you all to just really be fully present. If possible, let's not multitask during this time as we're so prone to do. I do it, right, where you're on a webinar. And to help us do this, I'm going to start by inviting us once again to play along here with me, and practice some self-care with some brief breath work. So we're going to engage our breath by doing what's called a 4-7-8 practice. We're going to take a breath in for 4 counts. We're going to hold it for 7 counts, and then we're going to release for 8 counts. You're going to be breathing in through your nose and out deeply through your mouth. So make some noise if you're alone, or who cares if people are around. Make some noise and release. Give it a and whatever comes to you, but just let it out. So I'm going to ask you to get seated on a chair if you're not, or on the floor, or even standing, wherever you're being called to be. And just keep your back upright, but not too tight. And just get comfortable. Close your eyes if you like. And now I'm going to ask you to rest one hand on your chest, your heart, and the other on your abdomen. And it doesn't matter which hand is where, just as long as your hands are comfortable. And then you're going to take your tongue to the roof of your mouth, kind of like where your teeth and your gums meet, but as long as it's comfortable, as long as it's there, it's fine. Let yourself relax and become curious about your body here. Feel the sensations, feel the touch, feel the connection as your breath raises and falls against your hands. Just breathe. You're feeling your abdomen expand as you breathe in and your chest contract as you breathe out. Now take a deep breath, the deepest breath you have taken in your life, and breathe it out like you mean it. Now inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Return your breath to normal. Notice how your body feels right now. Now open your eyes. Was that yummy, y'all? I hope so. I love doing that. And we'll discuss shortly the point of this exercise and the importance of breath work as an area for self-care and healing. This small activity can be a game changer for you. But before we get into the details of practices, I'd like to first share with you all briefly my personal journey to self-care. As I mentioned last week, I've worked in the nonprofit and social justice sector for 29 years. I've worked in almost every issue imaginable, from immigration to citizenship, electoral organizing, indigenous independent movements, alternative education, youth development, workforce development. In all these years, I was never told about self-care. There was never any talk of it, much less the need for it. In fact, work practice was counter to self-care. I was encouraged to work long hours, sacrifice my time, even at the expense of my family and my very self. And I did it willingly because I was so committed to the cause and I felt the urgency. But then things started to happen. As the years progressed, I began to get sick, sometimes with unexplainable, undiagnosable illnesses. This unsustainable way of working began to take its toll. A few years ago, I was working for a consulting client. It was a very important, high-profile client, and it was a game changer for my career. And I was making some serious moolah. It was a good gig that I had. But shortly after I took the contract, I realized that, oh my God, I hated working with this group. It was not in alignment with who I was and how I wanted to do business. But I decided to stay in this sugar-coated, racist, classist, and toxic situation for what I thought was my greater good. But as time progressed, I became ill. I began with a mysterious pain in my abdomen. I went from doctor to doctor and from test to test to get answers, but I could get none. And I was frustrated and I was scared. After almost a year with this client, all the while sick, I made the difficult decision to cut ties with this group, even though I didn't have enough clients lined up to supplant this income. But I was unhappy and I was frustrated, and I felt that it was compromising my professional integrity. But here's a funny thing. When I quit, I immediately felt such a deep sense of release and freedom. It literally, quite literally, felt like I had an anvil that had been lifted off me. And guess what? The next day, the mystery pain was gone. Like gone, like it had never existed. This was my aha moment, and I clearly understood why they say that stress kills. Before this, I had not made the connection with the pain of the job and the pain of my body. And so I began to research and explore and practice new ways of healing, and I committed to working and living in a whole new way and to sharing my passion on this topic with others. So most of the self-care practices I'm going to share with you are perhaps alternative practices, though they are widely becoming part of the mainstream. And if these practices seem out of your comfort zone, like, not my jam, Christina, I invite you to just be curious and perhaps stretch yourself a bit. And if you're like me, a total research and data geek, you'll perhaps want to have some evidence to buy in. So I'm going to share with you some proof as to the importance of these healing practices. Modern Western medicine and science are finally catching up with ancient wisdom and knowledge. And there's much scientific research taking place around the globe to prove the benefits of alternative healing practices that are separate from the industrial medical complex, or at least complement to Western medicine. And I believe in Western medicine again, so don't misinterpret that. I provided you links here of 2 short YouTube videos that go into the science of healing. And one is about yoga, and the other shows wisdom from the Chinese tradition, particular Taoist philosophy, and the power of the abdomen, also known as the second brain. Both show how science, especially with the availability of brain imaging, can show how these alternative practices, these ancient practices, can not just change behavior, but brain structure and function. These practices that we'll discuss today have the benefits of a molecular and cellular level change. You can literally change your DNA. And I've provided research and information in the updated Google Doc resource link, so don't take my word for it. Go check it out. So we did some breath work earlier. And many of you, as most people, don't take intentional breathing seriously because it's so simple and it's something we do every day without thinking. But healing is literally right under your nose. And I've provided you with a few links for YouTube videos. One is on the 4-7-8 breathing technique that we just played with. And you can check out these short videos. I think you'll find them helpful. Breathing is more than relaxing. It can radically enhance your brain and body function. Here's one proven benefit of breathing. It deeply slows the aging process by increasing secretion of anti-aging hormones. A 2013 study by Harvard Medical School Psychiatry Department discovered that people who practice breathing and meditation daily for 4 years have longer telomeres, the protective cap found on the end of chromosomes. And you want long telomeres because short ones have been linked to premature cellular aging. So get your breathing on, folks, and lengthen those telomeres. Visualization, another highly effective practice. Research suggests that being able to visualize what you want to accomplish is remarkably powerful. Visualization is a common technique actually used by athletes, which many of us don't know. Russian scientists are often credited for being the first to apply visualization theories to sports performance. After the 1984 Olympics, Russian researchers discovered that athletes could use visualization techniques to improve their performance. Since then, many studies have proven the same idea. A 2007 study in the North American Journal of Psychology found that by simply mentally imagining a hip flexor workout, athletes made strength gains comparable to those who actually did the workouts. A 2014 study in the Journal of Neurophysiology also suggests that just by thinking about gaining muscle may help you get stronger. Weightlifters who actually worked out gained 30% in muscle mass. Those who only imagined exercising still increased their muscle mass by 13.5%. I mean, that's crazy. So we can't underestimate the impact that our thoughts can have on our body. For this reason, it's so important to train your mind to focus on healing thoughts. So next time you want to complain about your situation, take that time to visualize a better future. So at least once a day, picture a highly specific goal. Imagine that you've already made it happen. See every single detail in your mind as if it's reality. What are you wearing? How are you feeling? Do you hear something? What do you smell? Are you alone? What's going on around you? So let's visualize this. You throw your car in a park. You rush into the office as you're finishing your breakfast that you began scarfing down while you were driving. You run into the office, pulling up email while also listening to voicemail, taking off your coat, having a conversation with a coworker, and all the while finishing a text to someone. Oh, wait a minute. Wait. You don't have to visualize this because this is your daily routine. I know oftentimes this is mine. But picture this. You drive up to your office building. You sit in your car for just 60 extra seconds. You take a deep breath, deep cleansing breath, and you set an intention for your day. You visualize exactly how you want to feel during the day. Maybe you want to feel calm, in control, and okay about the choices that you're making with your time. As you enter your office, you begin to imagine what feeling calm looks and feels like. Are you laughing? Smiling, slowing your pace? Do you feel cozy and safe? When you sit at your desk, you visualize how you would like your day to go and how you would like to feel in interactions with clients and coworkers. Really use your senses to practice what a better reality would be for you. As those images fill your mind, you might even repeat affirmations such as, I am peace in action, or I am resilient and flexible, and push aside doubts. Taking this time to imagine will set you up for self-care success. So some of you may be too young to remember, but this is Stuart Smiley, a character made popular by comedian actor Al Franken on Saturday Night Live. And he would talk to himself in a mirror by always affirming, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. And though the show poked fun at affirmation work, research shows a different picture. Studies show that this internal sense of self is a powerful thing. Similar to visualization, research on affirmations prove what neurologists call motor imagery, and it indicates that the same neurological networks are used to both imagine movement as well as to actually move. And imagining a movement over and over can have the same effect on our brains as practicing it physically, as well as leading to similar improvements in performance. David Sawyer is a psychologist and clinical director at the Center for Weight and Eating Disorders at the University of Pennsylvania. And he says that, in fact, a mirror is one of the first tools he uses with some new patients. He stands them in front of a mirror and coaches them to use gentler, more neutral language as they evaluate their bodies. The goal, he says, is to remove negative and pejorative terms from the patient's self-talk. It's to affirm a new reality. In much the same way, we can use affirmation work to create personal healing and healthier collective environments. We are practicing through speech a new way of seeing and being. So if you've watched the BET show, Being Mary Jane, with actress Gabrielle Union, you know her character, Mary Jane, is a huge fan of affirmations. She has Post-it notes all over her house, in her bathroom, in her office. Well, Mary Jane is onto something. There are three main psychological explanations for why self-affirmation is beneficial. First, it simply is enjoyable to dwell on what we value. Second, when we're feeling threatened by a particular criticism or failure, the technique reminds us of those things that we value about ourselves more broadly that are separate from that threatened aspect. And third, by broadening the basis of our self-worth, it can help us regulate our emotions. But even further, a brain imaging study published recently in Social Cognitive and Affective Neuroscience has revealed what's happening in the brain when people practice self-affirmation, helping to explain the technique's apparent effectiveness. Researchers can literally see the ways in which self-affirmation is associated with higher levels of brain activity and cognitive function. In a world that teaches us to hate, judge, and criticize ourselves and others, affirmation work serves as a balancing act, a form of reconciliation, and this is part of the self-compassion work that is so desperately needed. The last practice we're going to talk about is gratitude. Research again shows the benefits of this practice. Gratitude opens doors to new and improved relationships. It improves physical health. It improves psychological health. It enhances empathy and reduces aggression. Grateful people sleep better. It improves self-esteem. It increases mental strength. I mean, who doesn't want all that? I know I want it, right? And I've included this list here that you can look at. I found it on the app Pinterest. And FYI, Pinterest has some really useful self-care resources. And I was struck when I first saw this list because I was reminded of how often we take our life for granted. We focus on the negative and overlook all the small things that make our life amazing. Running water, relationships, and income, arms and legs, breathing. And I encourage everyone to start a gratitude practice. You can create a gratitude journal by writing things down, or even just a simple practice by, before going to bed, recounting 3 things that you are grateful for in your day. A gratitude practice takes you away from negativity and stress so that you can focus on the beauty and possibility of life, which fundamentally changes the way you approach change and challenge. Gratitude helps you become more flexible, resilient, and compassionate. Here's an example of a gratitude list or journal page you can use. I provided the link on my resources. There are other great resources on this particular website, Radical Transformation Project, so check it out. Really good way that you can start, as you can see some really great prompts for you. Again, check out my resource list for more info. All of the techniques I've highlighted today are about ultimately retraining your brain and your body. They're about establishing and strengthening a mind-body-spirit connection. I provided a very brief introduction on some of these practices. Each practice could be a course in and of itself. I mean, and I could talk all day and share much more about practices like meditation and forgiveness practices like the ancient Hawaiian tradition of Ho'oponopono or Shiatsu in Chinese medicine, which I'm currently being certified in. But I invite you to find something that interests you and just go for it. But ultimately, only you know what self-care means to you and what you need. Is it creating a checklist, maybe writing action items, taking a class, creating a small group practice with friends or coworkers? But you need to clearly delineate specific activities and celebrate accomplishments that support your more balanced mindset. What is important is that you commit and create a plan. We have to think about training our mind the way we would our body, or the way even athletes train. Let's consider what makes physical conditioning and technical development effective, and then compare it to the use of mental training. 3 key elements stand out for me. The first is comprehensive. Conditioning programs are comprehensive in design, aimed at ensuring that every factor to athletic success is developed and maximized. So in the same way, we must consider the various factors and areas of self-care. This chart shows the various areas we have to consider to be comprehensive and holistic. The second thing to consider is structure. Athletes engage in organized workouts based on a structured program that coaches believe will result in optimal physical preparedness for athletic competition. Similarly, we have to structure activities to carry out our plan. And third, consistency. What enables an athlete to get stronger and perform better is to engage in physical and technical training day in and day out. The same is true for self-care and mental spiritual training, or we could call it life balancing training. It has to be part of your daily routine. I've provided you a way of planning with this self-care wheel, and I personally really like it and have used it. I've placed it in the resources. You can download the full kit that has a blank wheel for you to fill out, and there's other cool resources on that link as well. But if the wheel seems like a little too overwhelming, like too much to have to think about, you can simplify it with 3 areas: mind, body, spirit, like this list shown here. Not my list, FYI. Also got it off Pinterest. Or just create your own plan. But I encourage everyone to begin a self-care plan. What are you being called to do? Trust yourself and your inner guidance to create a plan that will work for you. You can begin small. You can experiment and try different things and see what resonates for you. Feel free to have fun and to play. I have my plan, and I refer to it every single morning. I make sure to review it daily and hold myself accountable. It also helps me stay in alignment with my vision. And some days, honestly, I'm not perfect, and that's okay, because it's about progress and not perfection. Be gentle with yourself. We beat up ourselves enough with other things. We have plenty of other things that make us feel like failures and frauds. This should not be one of them. I also caution you that the effects are gradual and change takes time. You'd not expect to run for the first time and complete a full marathon, right? And self-care practice is the same. Stick with it and be patient. It works if you work it. I guarantee you, the healing and the blessings will come. I've been at this actively for 4 years, and it has truly, truly changed my life. Remember, any changes or improvements you make in your self-care will make a huge difference in your quality of life, quality of work, and ability to enact change. This concludes the session for today. I leave you with some self-care humor. Next week, we'll be talking about organizational structure and self-care. How can organizations support self-care? We'll be exploring some really cool things happening in the field and some new best practices from various movements. This ends my presentation. I ask you to please complete the evaluation so you can help me improve this course. Also, please send me your comments, your feedback, your ideas. I would love for you all to join me in the office hours to continue the conversation.